Good morning on Friday, the 29th of November 2024. It's 8 a.m. in the Gambia and therefore Coffee Time on West Coast Radio with me, Peter Gomez. And Coffee Time is brought to you in association with partners led by the USA, PEEC and Gamfood Trading, Easy Financial Services, Global Properties, Wave, Bloombank Africa, TAF Africa Global, and the Gambia Experience.
Did you know service plots are now available at Baki? Welcome to Baki, Taft City's fourth residential estate.
Yes, service plots available at Baki with 3 years interest-free payment plan with a minimum deposit of only $94,000, and it will come with fence plot, water reticulation, electricity, solar street lights, and bituminized internal roads. Are you ready to build your dream home for yourself?
Call us now.
And coming up in the program, what is the national budget? What's in the 2025 proposal? And why should you care? And why, imperfect as it may be, there must be willingness to embrace and make the borough government's proposed constitution work. I'll have two guests this morning. The Minister of Finance and Economic Affairs will be with me up to 8:30 to talk about the national budget for 2025 and take your questions on the government's spending plan. And from 8:30 or just after, up to the end of the program, the Constitution Promulgation Bill will be the subject of my conversation with the Executive Director of a CSO that would not like to see another draft constitution tossed aside by the National Assembly. In between, I'll play you new music by a Gambian rising star in the US, a wicked reggae slice, as they would say in DJing parlance. But before all that, a selection of headlines from today's newspapers. Thanks for joining us.
Looking for an establishment where value for money and unrivaled services with admirable turnaround time is guaranteed? The Port of Banjul is the perfect place for you, a vital gateway for trade offering connections to numerous global destinations. With improved infrastructure combined with a flexible tariff, the Port of Banjul remains a vital node in maritime trade. Along with its dedicated workforce, efficient service delivery, technology-inspired innovation, and an impressive record in handling all types of cargo, the Port of Banjul is also widely acknowledged as one of the safest ports on the continent with no history of piracy. As a major player in the region's maritime trade, accounting for 90% of all imports and exports, we are more than just a transit point, but a vital cog in the global trade sphere. Come experience a hassle-free fast customs clearance inspired by our simplified trade documentation procedures, safe and efficient cargo and vessel handling. The Port of Banjul offers prompt, reliable and value-for-money service, and customer satisfaction is guaranteed.
The Minister of Finance and Economic Affairs is expecting to take as many of your questions as possible, so you can start texting in 7711599 or 9910959. Those of you who want to send a WhatsApp, +220 9232 333. We begin our press review with the Point newspaper. NAM's query increased budget for presidential tour. UDP postpones nationwide tour. GPA hosts 32nd Intermodal Conference, and Madi Sise releases book depicting his tumultuous journalistic journey. On to Foraya's front page, students mourn brunt of traffic jam on their education. NAMS adopts report for reallocation of $169 million. FPAC recommends the allocation of $700 million to capitalize GGC. And residents condemn vandalism of Nawek borehole in Nemasu. Next, a look at the Voices front cover. The alarming rise of begging in the Gambia. A call for action. Ombudsman summons GCAA MD over failure to implement recommendations. FPAC recommends settlement of WIAC and school improvement grant arrears as committee issues raft of recommendations. And Bojang advises President Barrow against third term. We end with the Standards Friday front cover. CBG Monetary Policy Committee reports on economic outlook. Minister highlights absence of budget support in 2024 as challenge. UDP explains postponement of nationwide tour, and Banjul North NAM says reliance on grants and loans dangerous for a nation? And that was your first look at the front pages of Friday's newspapers. Our thanks to The Standard, Foroya, The Point, and The Voice.
Good day, my people. My name is Marcel Sanyang, Bank Farafenya branch. I just want to encourage my customers to use our mobile app and use our ATM. You don't even need to come to the bank to do any transaction. You can be at your home and you do your transactions. You can also use our ATMs. When the queue is long, you don't even need to enter the bank. Just use the ATM and off you go. I just want to encourage all of you that Trust Bank, we are here for you. We will make sure that we give you all what you need in your banking. Thank you.
Have you heard of Cash Up? Cash Up Gambia is a mobile wallet app that allows you to pay utility bills, buy mobile credit, and send up to $300 to anyone for absolutely free. With Cash Up, you don't even need to have a smartphone to receive cash sent to you. You could use the code via text to cash in at any Cash Up location in the Gambia at any time of the day or night. Hustle free. Forget long queues to buy cash power or looking for a mobile credit vendor or even lining up at the bank. Cash Up is here to make any transaction possible with the movement of a thumb from the comfort of your home or anywhere you are. Download Cash Up Gambia on Google Play Store or iOS today for absolutely free and enjoy the lowest fee in the Gambia. Cash Up. Fast, secure, mobile money.
It's Friday, the 29th of November 2024, and live on West Coast Radio, it's Coffee Time with me, Peter Gomez. Thanks for joining us. Now, every year around this time, the budget takes up a huge chunk of the public's attention, and rightly so. But what is the national budget actually? Is it an event? Is it a document? Or is it just a really important spreadsheet? Well, joining me with all the answers to these and more questions, hopefully from you, the listener, as well, is Alhaji Seedy Keita. Seedy, thanks for coming to West Coast Radio so early in the morning.
Yes, thank you very much, Peter, to you and all the listeners, and I'm happy to have you, that you have me here.
So what is a national budget?
A national budget is the translation of the government policies into resources that will be earmarked for the realization of government objectives. In a summary, is the translation of all the government policies and proposed course of action for a fiscal year, which are translated into the resource envelope and how that resource envelope will be financed from the revenue side. That is basically a government budget. Okay. Thank you.
And do you understand all the public attention that the budget gets? I mean, the most famous Gambian at this time of year in, year out, is always the finance minister, whoever it is that holds the portfolio at the time.
Yes, I think so, and for the right reasons, because that is where the resources and how those resources are being financed and coded, basically. So it's very good that the public has or do create the attention and give the wider discourse to discussing the budget. Because in the dispensation that we are in of democracy, everybody is a stakeholder in governance, and the government is here for the people. And one better way, there is no better way of describing that service to the people than through the resource deployment to those services and how those services will reach out to the citizens for which the government is meant to serve.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yes.
And of course, this the 2025 budget proposal, the bill,
yes.
Got off to a very controversial start with National Assembly members accusing you of arriving very late at the National Assembly.
Yes, I think there's a context to this. As you know, this revised timetable of the budget that it be tabled before, at least 60 days before the end of the year, is a constitutional amendment that went into force last year. Mm-hmm. And as of that time, it was a private member bill that was done at the National Assembly. We, as a government, did not foresee any impediments or challenge in order to realize that. and we were on course to meet the budget timetable. However, in between, as we were coming together, we realized the rising cost of living for the entire civil servants. And government felt that, look, the pay disparity between the core civil service and the rest of the economy is so dispersed, is so huge, that the pay issue has to be addressed. And discussion started, work started in earnest, until we reached at a level where we proposed a budget that contained an increase the level government wanted. But
what was that level?
That level was 75%.
Okay.
Then we had, of course, we are in an IMF program. As such, part of the program conditionality is that the budget for any upcoming year under the 3-year ECR program should be approved in terms of the fiscal framework in order to meet the overall program objective of a reduction in the debt levels. So that discussion took more than 2 weeks in country. Unfortunately, we could not conclude. So we went to the National Assembly. We said, look, we have this sticking point. We are good to go on the 1st of November, but we cannot incorporate the salary increase because no agreement has been reached.
When did the conversations on the salary increases begin?
The salary increase discussion started like 3 months earlier because we went into several iterations.
Because the argument in Parliament was you had a whole year.
No, it doesn't work out like that. Salary increase discussion, you have to look at your fiscal space.
No, what they mean is, this salary proposal, the proposal to increase salaries was done the previous year.
No, it was done in 2022.
Oh, that's even further out.
Yeah, but the gap was identified, and we, as a government, decided to address it in 2025 budget. The discussion started 3 months before the 60 days, before November 1st, when we started all the work. And you cannot just do that way ahead of time without knowing how you're executing the current budget and what fiscal space you may have. So that's, in fact, budget preparation is always informed by your existing execution of your current budget. So you cannot just, we started the discussion, but the actual number crunching started 3 months before the November 1st deadline. So when we went to the National Assembly, we said, this is the situation. If you want, we can. But National Assembly leadership, in taking the wider public interest, felt that, look, yes, this is a constitutional amendment, but the greater good for the entire country is the salary increase. So we give you leave to go to Washington, conclude the discussions, and then come and lay the budget on the 15th. That's why the National Assembly issued 2 notices. First was 1st of November, which was amended to the 15th. So it was not that Finance Ministry was late. No, it was a conscious decision that was taken in the best interest of the entire Gambia. And I think this is what leadership means. You look at the greater good for the constituency that you served. And we believe as a government, and this was spearheaded by the president himself, say, look, we cannot go to 2025 without a salary increase. These discussions were not easy. If you look at the region, inside of all the turmoils.
What issues, did the IMF have with the salary increase? Knowing the kind of salaries Gambians receive.
I think the discussion was basically the debt levels, the fiscal space.
So you have to borrow in order to finance the salary increase?
No, you don't. We don't. That's one of the key primary requirements, that the salary increase be funded from a permanent source of revenue.
And what's that permanent source of revenue?
This is a recurrent revenue stream on our own domestic resource mobilization.
Okay, GRA funds.
GRA, non-domestic, and GRA is not the only revenue collecting agency of government. You have the other MDAs that do collect revenue. So this salary increase is to be
MDAs,
funded.
for those who don't know, ministries, departments and agencies.
That collect revenue, like immigration, you have the fisheries, you have the justice, that collect revenue on behalf of the government. So, and other revenue measures which were put together to ensure that the salary increase that we are proposing.
So you're confident that GRA and all these MDAs can, year in, year out, collect enough local revenue to fund the salary increment bill?
Certainly. And that was where the discussion was, because we believe.
So why involve the IMF? They had no business in this. This is money generated locally.
No, it doesn't work like. You have to look at the overall fiscal framework, and the overall fiscal framework is to reduce the debt levels. as an issue.
So they are worried that the money from GRA and all these MDAs that would have gone to service our debt will now be used to, pay salaries.
Not only that, because not only salary, which is a recurrent expenditure, but you also have to look at the development requirements of the country, because you have to balance the budget. Is to fulfill the recurrent expenditure, which is to keep the government and the status quo afloat, as well as to invest in the infrastructure, in the human capital, in the healthcare that will build the foundation for economic development for the future.
And on the issue of balancing the budget,
Yes.
it's been described by your information colleague,
Yes.
the Minister of Information, and even the new Presidential Affairs Minister, as a near balanced budget.
Yes, actually, what is a balanced budget is that your revenues are adequate enough to to meet your expenditure. And this is what happened on the GLF this year, which is the government local funds. The deficit is 0.1%, which is a reduction of 67% from last year. And overall funds, the deficit is 1.3, which by all means, when we tested our data, it is the lowest in the last 10 years, simply because of two items. Apart from increasing the salaries, we are also increasing the revenue. Revenue is projected to grow at 23%. And this is not because we will increase tax on people, but we are going to widen the tax base. There are a lot of untaxed areas that we will look into.
Untaxed areas like?
Like if you look at the VAT collection,
Yeah.
we all know that VAT collection, we can do more. Rental income, we can still do more. Corporation tax, we can do more. And the overall compliance. It's the compliance regime that you'll see the digitalization that we have been putting in the revenue collection. And since the Askuda wall came into force with the SIGPA, the excise stamp, we have seen revenues jump by leaps and bounds.
Okay.
So those are the efficiency gains.
So when you say in the area of VAT you can do more, I hope it's not to increase.
No. It's the collection. Because it's one thing to have the VAT, it's another to make sure it's remitted. So now, as we speak, we do know, based on our own work done, that there could be more room for compliance enhancement. And it's those enhancements that we expect to see the efficiency gain.
Okay.
And by the way, people mention that we are overtaxed. No, that's not a correct statement, because your level of tax efficacy is tax revenue to your GDP. Regional benchmark, as we stand now, is about 16%. Gambia is hovering around 12%. So we are below the benchmark. OECD is about 35%, just to put in context. We are aware. And when you say overtax, it doesn't mean that because you deal with the tax authority and as such, that's no. You have to look at the global envelope. And the better indicator is tax revenue to GDP. We are mindful of the impact of any taxation on the population. As such, we are mindful of overall tax to revenue GDP. We are still below the regional benchmark.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
On the issue of debt, because every time a budget is presented, the debt figures keep going higher and higher. What's fueling this, this ballooning debt?
I think that a number of factors. One is the legacy debt portfolio. Two is the exchange rate, because most of a large part of our foreign borrowings are in foreign currency.
Of course.
And any depreciation in the dollar translates to higher nominal debt levels in dollar terms. So we all know what the exchange rate has been from 2017 to date. It was about 46 to the dollar. Today it's about 70. So, and most of these loans are long-term, 20 years, 30 years. So over an extended period, you have the exchange rate depreciation adding up more to your debt portfolio than would have been the case. That's why if you look at even our deficit financing in this budget, we focus on domestic side to limit what we are borrowing externally because of the foreign exchange impact. We have calculated, as of December 2023, the foreign currency impact of the debt portfolio was about 7.5 billion, which is just simply because the debt stock is that in dollars, when translated to dollars, it become more expensive. And this got worse because after the onslaught of COVID, there was a suspension of servicing of the principal. So technically, the debt stock in foreign currency remained constant while the dollar depreciate. Of course, new borrowings are happening, but the Dallas depreciation is a significant contributor to our overall debt levels.
I know the central bank,
Yes.
I mean, has the responsibility of explaining the depreciation of the Dallas, but I suppose the central bank and the Ministry of Finance work hand in gloves. So what's driving the depreciation of the Dallas? We heard from the last MPC report that it's somehow stabilized, dropping by 1 percentage point or 2%. And
that's a quarter-to-quarter movement in the short run. But if you look at it, we've moved from 40-something in 2017 to now 70, which is quite a large jump. The number one, let's not forget, this depreciation of the local currency is not unique to Gambia. If you look at other regions like Nigeria, the Naira has collapsed by more than 100%. Ghana by more than 50%. Simply because you have a number of combinations. If you export less and you import more, your demand for foreign currency increases. That puts pressure on your domestic currency. Also, the action of the Federal Reserve, the U.S. economy, where the dollar is based. Most of the transactions globally are dollar-based. And the dollar is rising on the strength of the U.S. economy and the higher level of interest rates in the U.S. So once the currency of the dollar appreciate globally, then of course, even if your balance of payment situation and other factors that determine your local currency strength remains the same, you will see a depreciation because you are moving against a rising target. So these are the combinations that give rise to a depreciation of any currencies of a country. Yes.
And looking at the 2025 budget proposals, apparently everybody who's looked at it has picked up something they don't like. And you would say, well, this is normal. For instance, Mr. Manneh sat there from the UDP yesterday and chastised the government for wanting to buy new cars less than a year after we bought all those cars for the IOC summit. I mean, you want what? You want $800 million allocated for new cars in 2025?
I had that number, but you see, I think we should take it with a pinch of salt. I don't go into people but we've had...
No, let's address the figure here.
No, the figure is not true. That is 800 million for new cars.
What is true?
What is true is much less than that.
How much?
It's about 300 million for new cars.
Or less than half?
Half of that. Okay. And simply because the cars that we bought for the OIC were not all financed in the last year. We have a carry forward of 400 million from that, which is a pay of that. So the way he put it is like we are putting on top of what already was purchased. He didn't realize that they were not paid for 100%. Don't forget this.
So why not put in the proposals for a layman like Peter Gomez?
Yes, we did mention that
300 million for cars purchased for the OIC summit.
No, 400. It is there. It is there as such. It is there as such. 400 million to service the balance of payment, the balance of arrears on OIC vehicles, and the other 300 will be for the new cars for the agencies. This is the entire government.
So 400 to service the OIC cars, another 300.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so that's close to 800 million.
No, but
that's 700 million.
No, but the way he put it is like we are putting additional 800 over whatever was done last year. So he was double counting the 400 because it was an add-on. So anyway, but with him, we had the case of Nawek here. When you talk about a number that is far exceeding the total balance sheet.
No, Nawek is Larry Cisse.
I don't know for him, but it's the same camp anyway. I don't know whoever said that, but I think we are open. Our doors are open. If any public or citizen wants any information, clarity on the budget, they can just contact the ministry. The budget is available. We will share every clarification to the citizens on the budget. So, but definitely it's not additional 800 million on new cars.
Okay.
Yes.
Questions flooding in. Good morning, sir. I have two questions for the minister. Please, can you ask the minister, how difficult is it to concentrate a greater chunk of the budget into one most useful area at a time so as to overcome whatever challenge is in that area? For example, I'm sure if a greater chunk is put into agriculture with stringent measures, we'll achieve food self-sufficiency. And second, what prompted the finance ministry to create a budget for the purchase of new SUVs when we had some not long ago What will they be used for if purchased? And this is coming from Sekou Sanyang in Kitty. I think the second part we just dealt with.
Yes, we dealt with that. But I think what he said is like you select one area, tackle it, and then deal with that the next year.
Yes.
Then what will you deal with? When you are doing that, what do you do with other sectors? Don't forget, government is a very diverse sector. You deal with all sectors at the same time. And I think when it comes to agriculture, I'll hope to dive into this, because people feel that government has not given priority to agriculture.
Yes, a lot of people do.
They have not understood the budget. The total allocation to agriculture, including all funds with development partners intervention, is about 6 billion.
The gap is that development partner intervention that people don't see in some of the figures that you
don't crowd out. They only concentrate on government local funds. And the budget efficacy, you are not funded only from the government local funds. You are funded from development partners. And as such, they are also putting resources. You cannot crowd out one sector. We have 11% of our overall budget allocated to agriculture if you take into account all funds. So it's like 950 million from government local funds, about 5 billion, 5.1 billion from partners. And this is, everybody can witness the number of projects in agriculture sector. It is important, and even when you look at what we are doing as a government, crop financing is subsidized. When we buy groundnut, we subsidize, and we subsidize more than 500 million.
Farmers are complaining that the 38,000 offered this year.
Well, I think they can compare with the next door, Senegal. We are 3 to 4,000.
They are not worried about what's happening in Senegal. They are only worried about...
It's market forces. Last year, if you look at our subsidy, it was so high that we had more groundnut coming from across the border into Gambia. As a result, we subsidize literally groundnut that we didn't produce. So basically, we are subsidizing crop finance, we are subsidizing fertilizer, and the partners are coming into the sector. So you don't crowd out one sector where you have help. There are certain sectors that the partners will never support.
Certain sectors like youth, for instance. Good morning, Uncle Peter.
Yes.
Although young people account for more than 70% of the Gambia's population, their access to economic opportunities and employment accounts for less than 20%. What is this budget doing for youth?
A lot. Because I think we have belabored this point in the past, that youth is...
Well, maybe they're still asking because it's not understood.
Yes. Youth is not a single ministry issue. You cannot address youth by tackling all youth affairs in one ministry, like, say, Ministry of Youth and Sports. No, because youth is definition up to the age of 35. If you look at our investment in higher education, almost half of the students at the UTG are on government scholarship. They are youths. You have the youth development, sports youth development levy. That's another additional funds that are not in the budget that also go to the youth activities. So when you look at the allocation to the Ministry of Youth and Sports, that is not the overall total government allocation of resources to the youth sector. If you go to the Ministry of Trade, matters of employment is a youth matter, is a youth factor. Most of the employment matters addressed for youths. You have the Enterprise Development Fund. You have funds such as the Social Development Fund, which has an asset base of about 300 million, where youths for entrepreneurs access to finance can be addressed. So youth issue is a cross-cutting theme such that the allocation, and in fact, if you look at the youth ministry, we have, for the ministry proper, just completed, financed the repairs of the stadium to the tune of more than 200 million. So that's already done.
We still can't use that stadium.
But it's just a remedial work. But then you don't have to budget an equal or larger amount to do the same thing. And we know that we're not going to AFCON next year. So when you are doing a budget, you look at the value drivers of the budget. What are the pressing issues that must be addressed? So in the area of youth, we are addressing it from the Ministry of Trade, in the Ministry of Higher Education, is in MOPSI, basic education, are all youth issues. So that's why to look at government emphasis as addressing youth only by virtue of allocation to the youth ministry is an understatement.
Okay, you mentioned one ministry there, which people, who look at the 2025 proposals, come away feeling that ministry is neglected. That is the Higher Education Ministry.
No, it's not, because higher education ministry.
It's given a paltry allocation in the budget.
The only issue that has not been addressed, we have just completed the construction of Farababanta campus. If you look at the development budget, there are other projects under the ministry that have been financed by donors like RICE. That ministry has $21 million allocated under the RICE project for addressing the issue of TVET. So now the issue that has been outstanding, and we have also introduced a new loan scheme for the higher education category, which is funded to the tune of 40 million.
It's a revolving fund.
Yes, revolving fund. So you don't allocate more resources when all of these are there. So we are aware that the development expenditure for the Mohast is one that, because we have like $8 million for the cost overrun of the construction of Farababanta campus, which the budget cannot accommodate in one go. Don't forget, the overall budget design is done with a way to ensure fiscal sustainability. So, and the budget for a year is not a be it all and end it all for a country. Yeah. You have other years to come. So that's how it works.
You've already run over on your allocation. So let me bring you more text messages. Please tell the minister to advise the other ministers to reduce their fuel coupons given to staff. They only end up exchanging these with cash at the fuel stations. This has to be concerning. If people are given fuel coupons to do their work with, and instead they go and convert it to cash to do other things with.
First of all, that's not supposed to be. The fuel coupons are meant to be used for government services to facilitate mobility, and the exchange of fuel coupons for cash is an improper act. So, but I'm sure the Minister of Transport is working on a transport policy. We hope that will address the fleet maintenance and management of government vehicles. Shortly, that will be tabled before Cabinet, and that will take care of this issue.
Good morning, Peter. Please ask the Minister about the depreciation of the Dalasi against the CFA, which changes every day. A few years back, it was $450 to 5,000. Today, it's $585. Secondly, why does the Gambia allow CFA to be everywhere, even in small local shops? But in Senegal, you can't get the Dalasi.
Yes, two distinct factors about CFA. CFA is not a national currency, it's a regional currency, and it's pegged to the euro. So the strengthening of the CFA against the Dalasi is not vis-a-vis our trade relationship with Senegal alone. It's linked to the appreciation of the euro. And we all know what has been happening with the OECD country currencies. The euro has risen, and as such, the rise in the euro exchange rate in the global financial market translates to a higher value for the CFA. And convertibility of the CFA is by default, given that it's not a national currency, it's tradable across a range of countries, it's a regional currency. So, I mean, it's a free market, people can translate, but as far as we're concerned, all domestic transactions should, as far as possible, be transacted in our national currency. This is what we encourage. But of course, transactions are between two parties. We cannot come in and say you cannot transact in a certain currency. But we encourage transactions in our domestic currency.
I'll get in this one as the last one, because my next guest has just sent in a message to say he is here and they are paying for their section. Uncle Peter and Mr. Minister, what's the way out of bankrupt NAWEC carrying half of our deficit budget? Isn't it time to get rid of the old Jawara and Jame GUC machines, heavy duty fuels, and go all out on renewable energy rather than purchasing power from untenable and risky car power, Senelec, and dams in Guinea that can run dry, or political instability, disrupts everything?
Think energy, NAWEC is, in fact, if you look at the implementation of this year's budget, NAWEC was one of the biggest challenges we had. We allocated $20 million, which is $1.4 billion to pay for the areas of NAWEC, given that they could not service those debts. And this was basically done to shield the population from a rate hike, tariff hike. The issue of energy for NAWEC is being tackled through an energy roadmap that is at implementation. And this is to focus on renewables. We have a 23 megawatt power station in Jambur, and that will be likely upgraded very soon into a 50 megawatt. there is going to be a 150 megawatt solar farm in Soma, which will also take away the procurement for the first 50 megawatt is in place. And we believe when those solar farms are up and running.
And how soon will that be, or how far out?
The procurement for the first 50 megawatt is already in course. I think the closing deadline is less than a month to go. After that, immediately the 100 megawatt will be launched, and that will be through an IPP, Independent Power Producer Network. So we believe once this energy through solar come on board, we'll have less need for the existing sources of supply. And we hope that to happen pretty soon.
And last,
yes,
absolutely last, why does the president need $50 million for his Meet the People tour? We understand, the budget for the Meet the People tour is to rise to 50 million next year.
Yes, I think constitutionally it says at least once. That means when you're budgeting, you may have to budget for maybe a minimum of 2. So, because constitutionally, he can do up to 2. So if you budget for only one, let's say 25 million, if a second one comes up, what do you do?
Ah, okay. So that's...
I mean, you have to look into things. Because budgeting is a forecast using projections based on what will happen. And this is a constitutional mandate. So you cannot just say, oh, he should go for only one trip. If he chooses to go for a second...
So if he does only one,
yes,
it means that all 50 million cannot then come...
well, if he does once and it comes less, the president will not spend more than he needs. Absolutely. If he does one and the actual...
Yeah, well, if he does one and says, he used up all 50 million.
No, it doesn't happen like that. Every expenditure is accounted for. So if he does one, it will be based on the actual cost of that one.
You will hold him to account?
Well, not hold... of course, every expenditure is being held to account, of course, without delay, without a fact, because every expenditure is audited. So if he goes on a one trip, then the cost of deploying that trip will be the actual cost. It may be more, it may be less, but that's how you budget.
All right.
Thank you.
See, in conclusion,
yes,
what do you want people to understand from, in their eyes, your budget?
Our budget is a national budget, and this is the policy pronouncement of the government, is that, look, this budget is anchored on emphasizing domestic resource mobilization. That is increasing our own revenue from in-house to ensure sustainability for the long haul, and 2, to tackle the rising challenge of debt. As you know, we allocated almost 29% of our budget to debt service. So the budget at the end of 2025, we expect the debt to GDP to come to a level of 65%. This level was as high as 85% in 2022. So if we bring down the debt levels, it will free up more fiscal space. More resources will now be deployed into investment in development-related areas, recurrent expenditure. And one very important aspect of this budget, it is putting people's money in people's pocket, particularly for the civil service. I think that's commendable. This government has increased salaries by 60% in the last 3 years. 2022, 30%. 2025, 30%. In 2019, 50%, taking it to a total of 110%. So that is a people-centered budget, looking at the conditions of the people, which are key to the economy and the government, and ensuring that you put money in their pocket for them to be able to spend and improve their livelihoods. So this budget is a people-focused budget. It's a budget focused, anchored on domestic resource mobilization, self-reliance, and also to reduce the debt stock. With those 3 pillars, we believe the development aspiration will be realized.
Seedy, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you.
That's the Minister of Finance and Economic Affairs, Alhaji Seedy Keita. He has been to Mecca.